Welcome to RE Colorado Pro Tip. My name is Maggie Andrews, and thank you for joining me as we talk through the October market statistics that have just recently come in. What's unique about October of 2020 was that this was a record-breaking month in many ways. And that's unusual because in the fall months, October included, we tend to see a seasonal decline in many metrics. Well, that was not the case this year. So keep listening as we talk through some of those record-breaking metrics, and of course, what do they mean to your buyers and sellers if your clients are still looking to dip their toe in the housing market? Today, we're going to be focusing on the Denver metro area. This includes the 11 counties right around Denver, and we will focus on residential listings, which includes attached and detached properties. Let's take a look at new listings to start. So in the month of October, we had just shy of 6,100 new listings hit the market in October alone. And like I mentioned, we had that slight seasonal slowdown from September to October, as we would expect. It was 7% fewer new listings month over month. Now, we did see a really significant increase of 12% as compared to October of 2019. So we are seeing far more new listings on the market as compared to last year or a more traditional fall selling season. Now, this was a record. This was the highest count of new listings of any October on record. And you might be saying, well, this is great. We're getting more inventory on the market, more new listings. Maybe this means this will ease some of the frustration that my buyers are experiencing in a hot selling season and throughout the Denver metro area. Well, I would caution you to slow down that thought process a little bit, because we can't talk about the supply of new listings without also discussing the demand that we're seeing from buyers. I kind of like to think of it like salt and pepper at the dinner table. You can't pass just the salt without passing the pepper at the same time. In the same way, we can't talk about new listing and the supply that's available on the market without discussing the demand that is also going on. So let's discuss pending listings, which is the demand side of things. Here, we did not see that seasonal slowdown from September to October. In fact, we saw an increase of 2% in properties that went into that pending status in the month of October. And year over year, we saw a huge increase, right? A massive increase of 27% as compared to October of 2019. This tells us that buyer demand is continuing to surge into the fall months. This was a record. This was the highest count of pending listings for any October we have seen on record. So comparing October 2020 to 2019 to 2018 and so on. What this tells us is that buyers typically pull back a little bit in the fall months. They are starting school with their kids. They are anticipating the holidays coming up. Well, those factors are not in place this year because so much of the world is still a little bit on hold, or we're conducting our life from home. And so buyers are still willing to be out searching for properties, even with their kids in school at home or working from home. Home has become one of the most important spaces for a family to feel safe, right? So they're prioritizing purchasing a home over everything else that's going on in life. In terms of closed listings, in the month of October, we saw a little bit less than 6,400 closed properties. Now, a slight seasonal decline here, 1% fewer closed properties as compared to September of this year. But again, a year-over-year increase of 24% as compared to October of 2019. Again, this tells us that buyer demand continues to surge. We're not seeing that typical slowdown in the fall that we would expect, that we tend to see traditionally in our trend lines. And so again, closings are still going on. That market is very active. I do want to point out, do you remember when we talked about new listings? It was about 6,100 for October. Closed listings, 6,368 for October. That's a little confusing. We have more closings than we do new listings. So let's match up those trend lines up against each other. So this chart shows us over the last 2 years, 24 months, the quantity of new listings versus closed listings. And I do want to put a line on here that shows when that stay-at-home order occurred back in March and April, because 2020 has been an anomaly of a year in terms of our spring selling season, which is typically the height of the year. Well, summer became the very busy selling. And what's a little concerning over here on the far right is that closed listings, the count has actually surpassed the available inventory of new listings. And this would lead me to believe three things about the market. So let me tell you a couple things I might guess based on closed surpassing new listings. One, I would expect that we are often experiencing a shortage of inventory on the market. If there's more demand from buyers and closed listings, then we probably don't have enough supply to keep up, and therefore buyers are struggling to get an offer accepted. There's more competition on the market from various buyers, and so it's leading to some frustration on the buyer side of things due to that shortage of inventory. Number two, I would likely say that new listings aren't staying on the market for very long. My guess is that days in MLS are likely quite low, and we'll look at that chart in a couple slides to confirm or see if that's an accurate assessment. And number three, I would guess price increases are likely happening in the Denver metro area. And how could they not? If demand is surging from buyers and there's not enough inventory to meet that demand, of course prices are going to increase in order to try and slow down the market a little bit or slow down the buyers who might be interested in what's going on. So let's talk a little bit about prices and maybe confirm that assessment. We're going to look here at median close price. And again, I like median because it tells us what's most frequently happening or most commonly occurring in the market, whereas an average can be skewed by that $15 million home, that kind of outlier high-priced property. So median, in the month of October, the most common price point for closed properties was at $475,000. This was another record, and not just for any October on record. This was an all-time high for the Denver metro area in terms of median close price. For detached properties, we had $516,000. For single family attached properties, we're looking about $337,000. And this was an increase as compared to just September of 3%. But compared to last October in 2019, this is a 13% increase in our median close price for the Denver metro area. Now, what I like about talking about prices, and this year in particular, typically prices tend to favor the seller if they're going up, or they favor the buyer if they're going down. Sellers are celebrating right now because prices continue to rise in the Denver metro area and they're seeing their equity increase. Well, what's unique about this year is this aspect of interest rates. Because they have been at historic lows most of the year, buyers are benefiting from pricing right now as well. They actually have more buying power because those interest rates are so low. But I would still caution you to tell your buyers, don't hold off. Don't wait to jump into the market. If you are interested, prices will likely continue to increase in the Denver metro area because we are such a desirable place to live. Next, let's talk about days in MLS. Again, this is a median. So it is telling us what's most commonly happening for properties that are going on the market in the Denver metro area. So you'll notice in October, we had a median of 6 days in MLS. Again, days in MLS counts the number of days a property was in the active status in the MLS. So it does not count coming soon. It does not count a pending or closed status, just that active time frame. And we have seen unchanged time frame for days in MLS as compared to September. And in fact, we've been pretty consistent throughout the summer months. July and August were right around 7, slightly higher in that May and June time frame. But as compared to last year, this has been, again, a very significant drop, 11 days less than where we were at October of 2019. And this is very much due in part to the demand that we're seeing from buyers and the lack of available inventory for new listings coming on the market. This too was a record. This was the lowest count of median days in MLS for any October on record. All right, inventory. This is a fun one because It's a great metric to show what you're probably feeling in the market, especially if you're working with buyers. Inventory tells us about an absorption rate. Essentially, this is what we would expect, the amount of time it would take for all of the available homes that are currently on the market if no additional inventory came to the market, okay? So an absorption rate. What we're noticing here is that it continues to shrink. October had just 3 weeks of available inventory on the market, and that's decreasing from even September when it was at 4 weeks. And compared to last year, October of 2019, we're 4 weeks less than where we were at that time. Again, this just substantiates any of the feelings that your buyers are experiencing of frustration trying to get offers accepted. The competition is very high. All right, so let's tie this up with a little bow and give you some talking points that you can share with your buyers and sellers. Again, if they're looking to get involved in the housing market in Denver. While we typically see that seasonal slowdown in the fall, that is not the case this year because our pending and closed listings remain significantly higher than what we were experiencing last October. And this, again, tells us that buyer demand is very strong. There is a lot of pent-up interest in the market and significant competition for your buyers. Now, there is a limited supply of new inventory, and yet that high demand, which we just talked about. And this is driving those prices higher. In fact, on median, 13% higher than October of last year. This tells us, again, prices are probably not going to be decreasing anytime soon. And combined with those low interest rates, now is the time to get involved for both buyers and sellers. This is a good market for both of them. Median days in MLS remains at 6. And again, this is a record for the month of October. Properties are flying off the shelves if you want to look at it that way. And I will say that new listings are selling really quickly, so buyers need to be ready to act fast and put in offers quickly. Thanks for joining me today as we talked through those October market statistics. We do have a lot of other resources at RE Colorado that can help you support your business and your communications with your clients if they're reluctant or unsure of how to proceed in the housing market in Denver. Check out our training class called Market Intel. This is a wonderful way to learn how to generate your own market statistics so that you can be that expert your clients depend on. And of course, our customer care team is available 6 days a week if you need any additional information on how to utilize these market statistics. Hope you have a wonderful week and we will talk soon. Take care.